I want you to think about the ultimate human question for just a second. Like, if you had to pinpoint exactly what makes life genuinely enjoyable and fulfilling, what would it actually be?
Well, I mean, for most of us, the default answer involves, some combination of wealth, fame, or maybe just sitting idle on a gorgeous beach with literally nothing to do.
Right. We treat relaxation as the ultimate prize, like doing nothing is the goal. But the science of human happiness actually tells a completely different story.
Yeah, a wildly different story. It basically upends how we structure our entire lives, our careers, even our weekends. Because we spend an immense amount of time chasing what we assume will make us happy,
Hmm.
only to find that the destination doesn't feel the way we imagined it all.
The goalposts just keep moving, right?
Exactly, they constantly move.
Which is exactly why we're looking at today's source material. For this deep dive, we're examining a really detailed review of the audiobook version of this foundational text in positive psychology.
Oh, absolutely foundational.
Yeah, it's a book from 1990 called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
And the influence of this work is just vast. I mean, it's shifted the entire landscape of human performance and happiness science. Csikszentmihalyi really wanted to decode the mechanics of a life well lived.
Right, but moving away from external markers of success, looking entirely inward at the actual quality of our moment-to-moment experiences.
Yes, how we actually feel while we're doing things.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission today is to decode this specific mental state that he calls flow. It's this elusive zone where time disappears, performance peaks, and we actively manufacture happiness rather than just, waiting around for it to strike us like lightning.
Which is such an empowering shift in perspective.
It really is. And the best way I can describe the core argument here is by looking at how we consume things. Think about the traditional pursuit of happiness, chasing money, buying things, getting likes on social media. It's basically like eating junk food.
Empty calories.
Exactly. You get an immediate massive spike of pleasure, but it's empty. You crash right after and you're just hungry again. But this concept of flow, it's like a deeply satisfying, incredibly complex, home-cooked meal.
That's a great analogy.
Right. It takes significant effort to prepare, but the fulfillment actually lasts.
And that distinction between passive pleasure and active fulfillment, that is the entire crux of his research. But to understand how to prepare that meal, so to speak, we first have to define what this state looks like in the wild.
Right. Before we can reverse engineer it, we need to recognize it.
Because flow is an active state of high engagement. And the review gives some great universal examples of this in practice. Like, think about a musician who's just totally lost in playing a piece of music.
Oh, yeah. Like their fingers are just flying across the keys.
Exactly. They aren't looking at the sheet music anymore. They are just entirely immersed in the sound. Or consider a writer who is so engaged in creating a world that they completely forget to eat lunch.
Or a programmer, right? Locked into writing code as the sun goes down, and they don't even realize the room has gotten dark.
Yes, you see it constantly in sports, too. It's what athletes describe as being in the zone, where the game seems to slow down and their reactions become completely intuitive rather than calculated.
Or even a gamer who is just utterly absorbed in a complex strategy game.
Right. And according to the author, these pockets of deep immersion represent some of the most rewarding experiences a human being can possibly have. What's fascinating here is that flow is not a state of passive relaxation. We have this culturally ingrained idea that our peak state is doing nothing, but flow requires rigorous effort.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me that kicking my feet up on the couch, watching a sitcom, and doing absolutely nothing isn't the peak human experience? Because I'm pretty sure my brain begs for that exact scenario on a Friday at 5 p.m.
Well, sure, your brain begs for that because you're fatigued, which is a biological reality. But we so often confuse recovery with fulfillment.
Oh, interesting. So they aren't the same thing.
Not at all. Passive relaxation provides recovery. You are replenishing spent energy. But there is a massive psychological difference between recovering from your life and actually enjoying your life.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Sitting on the couch recharges the battery, but it doesn't give the machine a meaningful purpose.
So passive pleasure is essentially biological recovery, whereas true fulfillment requires actual metabolic energy.
Precisely.
It sounds a lot like when you're driving on a scenic highway. You've probably had that happen where you're driving and suddenly you realize you don't remember the last 10 miles.
Oh, absolutely. Highway hypnosis.
Right, but in a good way. You were locked into the physical act of navigating the curves, perfectly in tune with the car, but in a highly productive way. Your brain was fully engaged, navigating a complex physical task, but the effort itself just felt invisible.
That is a prime example. You weren't asleep at the wheel. You were operating at a high level of subconscious competence. Your attention was fully consumed by the task at hand.
But knowing what flow looks like from the outside doesn't really tell us how to generate it on demand.
Right, the mechanics.
Yeah, if sitting idle on the couch isn't the secret sauce to a good life, how do we trigger this highly engaged state? Because if this is the recipe for a fulfilling life, I want to know the ingredients.
Well, the book outlines 8 characteristics of flow, but the review emphasizes that we need to look at 3 foundational characteristics first. These are the environmental prerequisites.
The setup, basically.
Exactly. You can't just snap your fingers and demand your brain enter flow. You have to design the architecture of the task to invite the state in. The first pillar is having clear goals.
Okay, so knowing exactly what you're doing.
Yes. You have to know exactly what you are trying to accomplish in a given moment. It can't be a vague aspiration, like it's not, I want to be a better writer today. It's, I'm going to write this one specific chapter.
Or I'm going to debug this one specific sequence of code.
Precisely. Because precision removes ambiguity. If a goal is vague, your brain has to expend cognitive energy constantly deciding what to do next. You're weighing options instead of executing.
And that's exhausting.
It really is. Clear goals eliminate that decision fatigue. You know the exact target, so all your mental resources are funneled directly into hitting it.
Which transitions perfectly into the second foundational characteristic, which is immediate feedback. You need a system that instantly tells you whether you are making progress or not.
Yes, the feedback loop.
The examples the source gives are playing chess or coding. In chess, you make a move, and the board instantly reflects your new reality. You see immediately if you've opened yourself up to an attack.
Right.
And in coding, you run the script, and it either executes or it throws an error. Immediate feedback.
And this feedback loop acts as an anchor. It keeps your attention tethered to the present moment. Because the task is constantly talking back to you, your brain is perpetually adjusting and reacting.
So you literally can't zone out.
Exactly. There is zero opportunity for your mind to wander off and worry about your grocery list. Because the immediate environment demands a constant response.
And that requires the third piece of the setup.
Yeah.
Which the source material actually calls the most important insight in the entire book.
Oh, without a doubt.
It is the absolute linchpin of the whole concept, and that is the balance between challenge and skill.
Yes. This is the razor's edge where flow actually lives.
Because if a task is too difficult for your current skill level, it creates anxiety, you feel overwhelmed and threatened. But on the flip side, if the task is too easy for your skill level, it creates boredom, you check out.
You're just coasting.
Right. So the perfect balance between those two extremes is the entry point to flow. It's a total Goldilocks scenario. Think about it. If I sit down to play chess against a grandmaster, I am terrified.
Of course.
I have zero chance, and my anxiety spikes. I can't focus on the joy of the game because I'm just waiting to be crushed. But if I play chess against a toddler...
You're bored out of your mind.
Exactly. I'm not engaged. To get into the zone, I need an opponent who is just slightly better than me, someone who forces me to stretch my abilities to their limit, but not so far that I break.
This raises an important question for you listening right now. How often do you actively calibrate your daily work or study tasks to appropriately match your skills?
Oh, man. Probably almost never. We just take what we're given.
Right. In modern life, we often just accept the tasks handed to us in whatever format they arrive. But if we want to experience flow, we have to become active architects of our own friction.
I like that phrasing, architects of our own friction.
Yeah, like if your job is too easy, you have to find ways to make it more complex, maybe by doing it faster or imposing new constraints on yourself to avoid boredom. If it's too hard, you need to break it down into smaller, manageable chunks to reduce the anxiety.
You're essentially hacking the difficulty settings of your own life.
That's exactly what it is.
So assuming we get that environment calibrated correctly, we have our clear goal, we have our immediate feedback, and we've struck that Goldilocks balance of challenge and skill, what actually changes physiologically? Like, how does the internal experience actually shift?
Well, once the environment demands that level of engagement, the brain has to adapt its processing strategy. And this brings us to the remaining characteristics of flow. The first thing you experience is profound, deep concentration.
Right, your attention narrows entirely onto the task. All those external distractions like the pinging phone, the noisy street, the office chatter, they just completely drop out of your perception.
It's an issue of cognitive bandwidth. Your nervous system can only process a finite amount of information at any given second.
There's a hard cap on it.
Yes. So when a task requires the optimal balance of your skills and challenges you just enough, it consumes all of your available processing power. Your brain literally does not have the leftover bandwidth to register the sound of the traffic outside.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that limited bandwidth theory explains the next characteristic, which is the loss of self-consciousness.
Yes, the fading of the ego.
The review highlights that when you enter flow, you stop worrying about what other people think. Social anxiety, self-doubt, that internal critic pointing out your flaws, it all just goes silent. Your mind becomes entirely rooted in the present.
We rarely consider how much energy the human ego consumes. I mean, it takes a massive amount of mental processing power to monitor how you look, how you sound, and how you are perceived by the social hierarchy around you.
Think about the irony of that. As a society, we spend absolute fortunes trying to silence our self-doubt.
Billions of dollars.
Right. We go to therapy, we read self-help books, we meditate, all to build up our self-esteem and quiet the ego. Yet flow acts as a natural built-in mute button for that exact same internal critic.
Because when you are pushed to the edge of your abilities, your ego simply starves. There isn't enough energy to do the complex task and worry about yourself simultaneously.
That is so incredibly cool.
The self temporarily disappears. You merge with the activity. And when you are no longer constrained by self-doubt, you experience an incredible sense of control over your actions, which is the next characteristic.
You aren't forcing the work is just flowing through you.
Exactly. And that also explains the seventh characteristic, why our perception of time warps so drastically.
Oh, the altered sense of time. That is such a hallmark of the state. Hours literally feel like minutes.
Because time perception is intimately tied to self-monitoring. We track time by checking in on ourselves, asking things like, am I hungry? Am I tired? How much longer do I have to do this?
So when the self-referential processing shuts down because you're so focused on the chess match or the code, the internal clock just shuts down right along with it.
Exactly. And the culmination of all these internal shifts results in the final psychological characteristic. The activity becomes rewarding in itself.
Also known as intrinsic motivation.
Yes. You do the thing because you love doing the thing. You aren't doing it for a paycheck or for a trophy or for external validation. The doing is the reward.
Which is really the purest definition of freedom. When the activity itself is the reward, you are no longer dependent on the outside world to validate your existence or provide you with a sense of fulfillment. You carry the capacity for joy entirely within yourself.
It's completely internal.
Now, understanding those mechanics is powerful, but the review stresses that Csikszentmihalyi's research goes further. It reveals a really fundamental flaw in how our society pursues happiness in everyday life. And the scientific foundation backing this up is just massive.
Yeah, this isn't just an armchair philosophy. Csikszentmihalyi conducted extensive experience sampling studies. He equipped thousands of people across a huge variety of professions with pagers.
Wait, like actual 1990s pagers?
Yes, actual pagers. And whenever the pager beeped throughout the day, the subjects had to record exactly what they were doing and how they felt in that exact moment. He tracked athletes, musicians, assembly line workers, scientists, artists, and surgeons.
And he found that peak experiences share the exact same architectural patterns regardless of what the person actually does for a living.
It's a universal human operating system.
Right. The brain of a surgeon performing a complex, high-stakes operation is experiencing the exact same mechanics of flow as a painter working on a canvas, or like a teenager mastering a skateboard trick. These findings really became the bedrock of modern positive psychology.
And the overarching conclusion from this mountain of data is that money, fame, and luxury, the external markers we are conditioned to relentlessly pursue, they provide only fleeting pleasure.
The junk food.
The junk food, exactly. True. Lasting fulfillment comes from mastery, from creativity, from engaging with meaningful challenges.
And the review breaks down how this applies to everyday domains. And it really upends a lot of assumptions. Like, we know it applies to sports and creativity. It even applies to relationships. Like, a deeply engaging, challenging conversation with a friend can trigger flow. But I really have to push back on the findings regarding work, because the research shows that people are generally happier when they are deeply engaged in their jobs than they are when they are idle at home.
It sounds totally counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It rewires the entire working for the weekend mentality. We spend Monday through Friday dreading the effort of our jobs and dreaming of Saturday so we can do absolutely nothing.
Yep, that's the standard narrative.
But this data suggests that if a work project is calibrated correctly, with clear goals and the right challenge, we are actually experiencing more psychological fulfillment at the office on a Tuesday than we are lying on the couch on a Sunday afternoon.
It is the great paradox of modern life. When people are at work, they often report wishing they were at leisure. But when the data actually tracks their psychological states in real time with those pagers, they report feeling more creative, more satisfied, and more capable when they are working.
That's wild. Why is that?
Because work often inherently provides the structure of flow. It offers clear goals, immediate feedback, and challenges to overcome. Leisure time, conversely, is largely unstructured. It lacks clear objectives.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
And because it lacks structure, if we aren't intentional with it, leisure quickly degrades into apathy or just mild depression. We routinely misjudge what actually makes us happy.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture,
It requires us to completely redefine our relationship with difficulty. We spend our entire lives trying to make things easier, trying to eliminate friction and find shortcuts. But the science shows we are most satisfied when we're actively grappling with friction.
happiness is not a passive state that just washes over us while we wait. It is something we actively forge through engagement.
Exactly. The ultimate formula, as the source points out, is skills plus challenge plus focus equals flow.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you want to start rewiring your brain using these frameworks, what is the best way to consume this specific material? Our source today is a review of the audiobook version geared toward a channel called ThinkIQ. And the review notes that this book perfectly combines psychology, productivity, peak performance, and happiness science all into one package. But considering it's an academic text from 1990, is it going to feel like a dry, boring listen?
Well, the medium matters significantly when you're trying to absorb complex psychological concepts. A hype-driven, super fast-paced narration would actually undermine the deeply reflective nature of the content.
Which is why the review praises the narration so much. It's described as calm, professional, and educational. The reviewer specifically notes that listening to it feels like attending a fascinating, high-level psychology lecture rather than enduring some loud motivational speech.
Which is a relief.
Truly, it uses clear explanations, smooth pacing, and an easy-to-follow structure to make dense scientific concepts accessible. It's rated as an excellent companion for long commutes, and listener retention for the material is remarkably high.
However, the review also highlights some potential friction points, depending on your expectations. Because it is a foundational scientific text, it does retain an academic style that relies heavily on research and theory.
Right, it's less step by step. Like, it focuses much more on giving you a profound understanding of the psychological mechanics rather than handing you a bulleted action plan for how to schedule your morning routine.
Yeah, it's not a listicle.
And because of that slower pace, listeners who are just seeking quick productivity hacks might find themselves a bit frustrated.
It requires an investment of your attention. You can't just passively consume it and expect your life to magically change.
If you look at the overall ratings from this ThinkIQ review, it scores a very high 4.8 out of 5. It specifically nailed a perfect 5 out of 5 for content depth, scientific foundation, and overall experience. But it scored a solid 4 for practical value and narration.
Very respectable scores.
So what does this all mean? It means if you want a superficial top 5 hacks to work faster list, you should probably skip this one. But if you want a timeless framework that will fundamentally alter how you view success, focus, and your own capacity for joy, this is an absolute must-listen.
To synthesize everything we've explored today, the core truth of Csikszentmihalyi's work is that happiness stems from engagement, not from passive pleasure. Mastery creates genuine, lasting fulfillment. Deep focus produces peak experiences. And most importantly, meaningful challenges are not obstacles to a good life. They are the very engine of it.
You can't just avoid the hard stuff if you want to be happy. You have to actively hunt for the right hard stuff.
And that leaves me with a final thought to ponder, one that builds directly on the mechanics we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If flow intrinsically requires sustained focus, the overcoming of friction, and a deep internal motivation, are our modern technologies like smartphones and algorithmic feeds that are deliberately engineered to provide instant, effortless pleasure and constant distraction, Are they literally robbing us of our biological capacity to experience true happiness?
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal question to sit with. The junk food versus the home-cooked meal, right there in our pockets, constantly fighting for our limited cognitive bandwidth.
Every single day.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really appreciate you taking the time to explore the architecture of a good life with us. So your mission for today, turn off the autoplay, put away the easy distractions, and go actively architect a healthy challenge for yourself. We'll see you next time.